Hello everybody, today we're going to be making our monochromatic value drawings. So what you're going to need is a piece of white paper, lined is okay, either a crayon or a colored pencil. You will need a pencil. You will also need some sort of thick paper to cut a stencil out of. If you don't have this, you can also just use regular paper. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is to create a stencil. So you can make your stencil with your cracker box. I'm gonna cut this open so it lays flat. So you can make your stencil of whatever you would like. Maybe you'd like to make a symbol or an image that represents or shows something that's important to you. So for my stencil, I want to create a shell. So your stencil should be a very simple drawing, and it's just the outline of a drawing. Kind of like when we made our contour line drawings, similar thing, right? So we just want to make a really, really simple stencil that we're going to be tracing. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out my little seashell. All right, so now I have my little stencil. I'm going to put that to the side. What we're going to do now is you're going to take your white piece of paper and you're going to fold it in half. So hamburger style, okay? So on one half, we're going to be making a value scale. So we could even fold this in half like this. Okay, so we're just looking at our value scale. So with a pencil, what you're going to want to do is draw a long rectangle. And then you're going to want to split that rectangle in half one way. So then you have two equal parts. Okay, and then you're going to split one part into two by drawing a vertical line down the center. And then your second half, you're going to split into two by drawing a vertical line down the middle. So now you're gonna have four equal parts. Okay, so I'm actually going to think of, remember we're doing a monochromatic design. So that means that we're only using one color. So if I'm doing like an ocean theme, I want to think of the color or the mood that I want to go with. So I'm going to go with like I think like this turquoise, this is a blue-green color to represent the ocean, right? So think about the color that you want to use. If you want to make your value scale with a pencil, you can also do that as well. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to, as lightly as you can, you're going to fill in. So I'm like it's almost like I'm drawing with a feather. I'm drawing as lightly as I can with my crayon. I'm putting down only just a tiny bit of pressure as I'm filling in this first little rectangle. So this is going to be the first rectangle on my value scale. All right, so once you're done filling in that first rectangle, I want you to go to the last rectangle and I want you to fill in this rectangle as dark as you can. So this is my darkest value and this is my lightest value. So now what we want to do with these two middle rectangles is fill them in with our middle values, right? So this one here is just going to be a little bit lighter than our rectangle on the right. So I'm going to start light. So I'm using like a medium pressure to press down on my crayon. So I'm going to start a little bit lighter with my first layer of crayon. And then when I go back over, I'm going to make one more little layer a little bit still pressing kind of like a medium, with medium pressure, right? So it's a little bit lighter than this rectangle on the right, okay? And then for this middle, I'm gonna start really light. So I'm pressing, using very, very light pressure, just like I did with my first rectangle. I'm gonna fill that whole rectangle with my very, very light pressure. And then I'm gonna go back over one more time over this rectangle, still with my light pressure. All right, so now I have light to dark, and this is my monochromatic value scale. So the next step is we can open up our paper, and we're just going to be drawing on this side of our paper, and we're going to be using our value scale to help us with our drawing. So the first thing that we're going to do is you're going to trace your stencil 3 to 5 times. So if your stencil is bigger, you'll trace it less times. If your stencil is a little smaller, you'll trace it more times. I'm gonna number my value scale. For this first step, what you're going to want to do with your crayon or colored pencil is you're going to want to fill these shapes in as lightly as you can. So just like you did in your first rectangle on your value scale, you're going to fill these in as lightly as you can. So now I'm done with my first layer of seashells. Now I'm going to want to do some more tracing. So with this second layer that we're going to draw, I'm going to trace my seashells again. But as I'm tracing, what I want to do is I'm going to do about, again, I can do 3 to 5 of these little seashells. But when I'm tracing, I can overlap, right, my shape. So I can have one shape on top of the other. Oops. But when I'm drawing, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I don't draw with my pencil on top. So I would skip this area over here, right? Because I don't want to go over the seashell that I already drew, right? So it looks like I have one seashell that is behind the other, right? So I can do that a few more times. All right, so now we're ready for layer 2. So we're gonna look at number 2 on our value scale, and we're gonna try to match this value or darkness, right, of our color in our second layer. Right, now it's time for our third layer of seashells. So we're going to want to trace some more of our seashells and fill them in with our third darkest value. So again, I'm gonna take my seashells, and I have some empty spaces here, so I'd like to fill those up a little bit. So I'm gonna trace my seashell 3 to 5 times again. So now it's time for us to use our third darkest value. So again, we're gonna start a little bit lighter than we think we need to, and then we can layer up to make our shells a little darker. So we're gonna wanna make our shells darker than this last layer that we're just working on. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna fill in all the empty spaces in our artwork with the fourth value, so the darkest value on our value scale. When we use a value, what happens is darker values look further away and lighter values look like they're closer. So when we create value in our artwork, what we're doing is we're creating a sense of depth. So things being closer and things being further away. That also creates a sense of space in our artwork, so that it looks almost like there's some space between all of our little objects that we drew. So this creates an artwork that looks more three-dimensional. Something that's three-dimensional is something that looks a little bit more realistic, right? Not as flat. So that is why artists create value in their artwork, is to create something that looks three-dimensional and to give it space and depth. I can't wait to see the monochromatic value drawings that you come up with. Please follow your teacher's instructions on posting your artwork, and I will see you next time.